Welcome to Let's Just Say Go Comedy's monthly storytelling night, Ghost Story Edition. Thank you all for being here on this very Halloween-y night. We're going to tell, we might have to shout, testing. Pete.
Working on it.
Alright, so here's the thing, this is an improv theater and this mic's just for show anyways. Ooh, okay, so that's good. So how many people here have ever been to a storytelling night?
Yeah.
Cool, like 30 of you. Alright, so what you're about to see is one by one people are going to come onto stage and they're going to tell you a true story. And usually for Let's Just Say and a lot of others. Oh my god, it's the ghost of Pete Jacobs, everyone. These mics are haunted. Pete, I'm keeping this one. This one doesn't work.
Okay.
All right, cool. So we're off to a good start. And so what you're going to see is everyone's going to come on stage. They're going to tell you a true story. Usually, let's just say we have very broad themes like firsts or change of heart. Something that you could kind of, if you want to tell a story, you could fit in something into that theme. This theme is very specific. Everyone coming on stage has had an encounter, or thinks they have an encounter, you decide, with something paranormal, a ghost, something unexplainable. Really, everyone's about to tell you about a time they were super scared. So, and before we begin, there's only one thing. We're going to try to keep the stories under 7 minutes. If people go over, I'm going to let them know by playing this little harmonica. And I wish I had something spookier to play, but that's what I got. The alternate is I could just scream at the top of my lungs, which... Pete! Oh, here we go. Cool. And then, before we start, I do need to introduce you to Jeremy St. Martin over here. Jeremy is our music director. He's going to be adding a little Halloween flavor to the night. So to get us started, I'm going to tell you about the most scared I've ever been. And we're going to go way back to 2003. And I was a freshman at Michigan State. And my friend Mike and I were in a Greek mythology class. And he had missed class that day because he was like watching Bridget Jones's Diary or some terrible excuse like that. We missed class a lot. But I had gone and I was headed to his dorm to share my notes with him. And Mike lived in Mayo Hall, which anyone who's been to Michigan State is very familiar with Mayo Hall. I was vaguely familiar with Mayo Hall at this point because I was new. But it's on the oldest part of campus, and it's just a very classic, like collegiate, red brick, Gothic architecture, big bay windows. There's huge oak trees surrounding it. And so I walked inside, and I'm in the East Lounge, and in the East Lounge is this portrait, and it's of Mary Mayo. And Mary Mayo, I looked at the portrait every time I walked through this lounge, because it already seemed like she was looking at you, like no matter where you were in the room, it was just one of those paintings that the eyes just seemed to be on you. So, and I had, just from what Mike had told me, people said that Mary Mayo haunted Mayo Hall, and that students had woken up to their lights flickering. And then other people had said that in the middle of the night they could hear faint sounds of piano playing. And then other people said that they had seen her. So all of this goes through my head as I'm walking through the lounge. And when I see her, I realize that I've come through the east and I need to get to Mike's dorm on the west side of the building. The only way that I know how to do this is to go through a tunnel through the basement. And I've never done that before without Mike, but it's fine, it's whatever, it's like 10 p.m., there's lots of people just studying, it's fine. So I go down the stairs, and then in the back of my head, I'm remembering how every time I've been down there with Mike, he makes sure to remind me that the basement is where Mary Mayo committed suicide, or so everyone says. So this is going through my head, but it's fine, it's brightly lit, and there's no people, but I'm approaching the laundry room, and I look inside, and no one's in there either. But I'm like, it's fine, I'm just gonna, I try to put my thoughts on like better things besides Mary Mayo. I thought about mine and Mike's Greek mythology teacher who looked like Andy Dick, and I learned that day, and I know this because I wrote a column about it. I learned that day that he could speak in Greek, so I was very excited to tell Mike that Andy Dick could speak Greek. So I'm thinking about that. I pass the laundry room. Suddenly the lights cut out, and I hear the TV behind me turn off. And I know that the power just went out. The power just went out, and I just take a second and I take a deep breath because I can hear my heart pounding in my ears. And I put my hand on the wall. The wall's there, it's fine. I'm like, just keep walking, just keep walking. And immediately, the floor creaks in front of me like someone is standing there. But that's impossible because I just, like, this lights have been off for like a second and a half, but I feel someone there. And I'm just frozen, and I'm trying to get up the nerve to open my mouth and just say, hey, but I can't. And then I feel a cold breeze in this basement hit me, and I feel it on my collarbone and it goes down my neck, and suddenly the entire basement is freezing cold. And so I feel like I was so scared that I like blacked out for like a second because I just hear then I just realize I'm like screaming, like sounds are coming out of me that I didn't sign off on, but like I have no control on them. And I'm running, and I turn around and I run back the way I came, and I run up the stairs and I fling open the door, and the power is only out in the basement, so everyone in the lounge has heard me and they're all staring at me. And I just keep running, because I don't want to give up that I think I just saw a ghost. I run, Mike doesn't get his notes, and I never go back into Mary Mayo Hall by myself again. That's my story. Some people may say, you just heard the story of me having a mental breakdown in a hallway, and that's one version of it. Who knows? But I know for sure that I'm a person who runs away from ghosts. Now, many people who are going to tell stories tonight, they actually look for ghosts and seek them out. So I am as excited to hear their stories as you probably are. Are you guys ready to get to our storytellers? First to the stage, he is a teacher here at Go Comedy. He's also a stage manager. Please welcome Mike Ramey.
You're mysterious. Okay, so my story was way back in 2007, so far back. I had just bought a house in Dearborn. It was a 1929 brick bungalow. If you're familiar with that style of house, it's the kind that has the entire top floor is the whole bedroom. So the first floor is like all your living quarters, and they got stairs that run up the side of the house. In this case, the stairs came up and wrapped around, and you saw like the length of the bedroom. I was married at the time, and I was getting ready for bed with my wife, and she turns to me one night and she says, we've probably been in the house maybe 6 months or something like that. She turns to me and she says, "Can we switch sides?" And for those of you who have been in a long-term relationship, you know that you pick sides of the bed, right? So her side of the bed was facing the stairs, and I really didn't care. So naturally, I just say, yeah, that's fine. But curious, I wanted to know why. So she tells me that she, over the last few nights, has seen a shadowy figure come up the stairs and stand at the stair, like the top of the stairs facing the bed. She says sometimes that shadowy figure comes up and just stands there and looks at her, and she'll close her eyes and kind of go back to bed. And then sometimes the shadowy figure looks at her and then starts like kind of slowly walking to the end of the bed. And at that time we have, in this house, we had a bathroom like right across the bed from us, so it would walk across the room and into the bathroom and just kind of disappear. So I had worked on this house for months and never heard anything. I mean, it was an old house, so it had like weird creaks and stuff like that, but never heard anything crazy. So I'm like, whatever, kind of making fun of her. So I say, yes, I'll take this side of the bed, thinking nothing of it. So fast forward about, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks, and it wasn't something we had discussed, it just was like, switch sides, we're good. Nothing happened until one night, dead of the night, probably around like 2 or 3 in the morning. So this is one of those nice summer nights, you got the windows open, it just breezes through, it's beautiful. I'm completely asleep, and all of a sudden the bed just starts shaking, like someone's on top of the bed jumping on top of you. Like, you know, like if kids jump on the bed while you're on it and it's just bouncing you. And don't get me wrong, the bed's not like lifting off the ground like it's the movie or something crazy like that. But it was totally like we were both shaking. And I freak out. I like wake up immediately, but I can't move. My arms are pinned to the bed. My legs are pinned to the bed. And this was literally like a split second. And so finally, I force myself up. I sit up. I look over. My wife, my ex-wife, is sitting up as well. And I look at her and I go, "What was that? Like, what happened?" Thinking that was her. And she looks at me and she says, "He was standing on the end of the bed, and he jumped on it." And I freaked out because I didn't tell her that my arms were pinned to the ground, were pinned to the bed. And that's my story.
Thank you, Mike. Our next storyteller is a Detroit music journalist. He has written for the Detroit Free Press, Metro Times, Pace Magazine, among others. Please welcome Jeff Milo.
So, this happened when I was about 10. I was always a pretty quiet kid. Not necessarily because I was shy, and not necessarily because I was eavesdropping on the adults. It's because I was listening for something beyond that. I was really obsessed with the supernatural. I believed in it all. I believed in ghosts, UFOs, Yetis, Loch Ness Monster. I didn't get to sleep. I would go to bed and just stay up for 2 hours, just listening. Because I wanted to hear something, I wanted to hear a ghost in my room. I didn't want to hear it, but it's like I knew they were out there. Anyway, I'm 10 years old and I'm at a camp, it's sort of a summer camp, that our school organized for us to go to. So we're out in the middle of the woods. It's May. And I'm not used to that. I mean, I'm separated from civilization. There's no cars or street lights. It's quiet, and crickets and birds and other things out there making all kinds of noise. It's May, so we're doing all kinds of camp stuff. We go to a lake, we make a fire, we do crafts, whatever. But we're also invited to go out and look at Jupiter, because it's a night where you get to see it if you have a telescope. And one of the adults brings a telescope and they invite all of us out through the woods. We have to go for this hike, it's about 20 minutes. And we have to get to this clearing. And then we have to get to this telescope that's set up to look at Jupiter. So we're all walking single file through the woods, walking over brambles and leaves and sticks and stuff. We're all just until we get out to this clearing. And it's as big as a city park, this wide clearing. And we're all gonna line up, and we're all gonna look through the telescope one by one. And I'm about 10th in line in this clearing here. And then it catches my eye, something out there. It's like white, glowing light. And it's coming out from the trees. And it's moving. And it's got legs and arms. And there's something else behind it, and that's white and glowing. And then there's something else right behind that. 3 bodies. These white glowing bodies, they're about 100 feet from us. We're all still lined up waiting to get to the telescope. But I'm looking. 4, 5, 6, they're all moving in lockstep, almost like at a fast hiking pace. Almost like jogging almost. 11, 12, 15 of them, it looked like there were 20 of them, and they're all in single file, and they're all marching in the other direction, and they've all got this white glow because the clouds have just parted and the moon has just poured down upon them, and we're all just waiting to look at Jupiter, and none of these kids are looking at what I'm looking at, and I'm looking. And I just remember marching up this clearing and stepping all over the brambles and leaves, making all that noise, and they're walking over the same brambles, but they aren't making any noise. And it's almost like they're floating. And then one by one by one by one by one, after appearing into my vision for about 30 seconds, they just move on back into the woods. And I didn't look at Jupiter, I just stood there like this the whole time, and kids just kept going. And so I went back to our little cabin and I covered myself in my sleeping bag and tried to get some sleep. Until there's this big burst of light and a little burst of noise. Just as I was about to listen. But that's not the scary part. It turns out that the kid in the bunk above me had just woken up suddenly and his forehead had crashed into a light bulb. He just went straight right angle because he's a sleepwalker. Anyway, I tried to relax and go back to sleep and forget the ghost hikers that I had just seen. And I was thinking, like, now, when I think back on that, ghosts are usually thought of as haunting a place. They have maybe a horrific death and they get trapped somewhere. They're in a bedroom or a basement, and they're always the haunted house then. Where were these ghosts going? Because it looked like nothing could stop them. They're out in the open, and they were going somewhere. If they were in purgatory, they weren't stuck anywhere, and I just wonder where they might be right now, because they're probably out there in the woods. That's my story.
Jeff Milo, everyone. Jeff owns a black cat, also, unsurprisingly. Our next storyteller is a performer and host here at Go Comedy. Please welcome Katie Hoffman.
So my story is my junior year of college. I did a study abroad in England and in Scotland over the summer. And when I was in Scotland, some friends of mine in the group in my program and I, we saw this advertisement for a nighttime walking ghost tour of Edinburgh, Scotland. Edinburgh, super old, lots of weird stuff has happened there, so we were like, this is gonna be fun. And the flyer said, experiences on every tour, guaranteed. So we were like, this sounds great. It also started in a pub, a very old pub that was haunted, of course. And part of your ticket price was the first pint was on the house, even though you paid for the ticket, so really you bought the drink. But it sounded good to a couple college students, so we signed up. And it was a fantastic tour. Your run-of-the-mill walking tour. Turns out Edinburgh has a super dark past. Lots of death. Death from disease, from persecution, from war, go figure, Middle Ages Europe, and then just run-of-the-mill murder. So the tour guide was walking us, she was really knowledgeable. She'd walk us by like a hospital and she said, here's where lots of people died of the plague. And we'd walk a little further and she'd say, here's a house where some guy killed his whole family with a hatchet. But it culminated in, we landed in this place called Greyfriars Kirk, which was this very old cemetery. And it was encircled in like a stone wall. And we get in there and the tour guide is kind of going over what had happened there. And during the Crusades, they rounded up all the Protestants who refused to convert to Catholicism and imprisoned them in this cemetery and left them to die. Really uplifting tour, right? So yeah, it was, by the time we got there, it was dark. Like it started, it was dusk, now it's dark, and we're in a graveyard, it's at night, it's spooky. And she's like, we're gonna now go back to this place we call the Black Mausoleum and check that out. So we walk back to this like stone structure, and it's maybe half the size of this room. And we all shuffle in, there's probably 20 people on this tour. And I'm in the very back corner. And the tour guide has a flashlight with her. She's had it the whole night, And she starts to talk about the things that are happening. And she's like, whenever I come in here, my flashlight will usually go off. Flashlight goes out. And I turn to my friends, I'm like, nice. If this is the experience that's gonna happen, the guaranteed experience, I'm gonna be pissed. And she hands it, this tour, the people on the tour are like, ooh. The flashlight went out, oh my God. And she hands it to some people and they can't turn it back on. Shocker. And so I'm in the corner just like, whatever. And she starts to go over like some of the things that happen in this room. And she goes, this is where most of the experiences happen. And I'm like, okay, now we get our money back. And she's like, mostly in this back corner. Points right at me. So I'm like, cool, I'm in the right spot. She's like, people feel cold spots, or feelings of dread, or they feel like they're being touched, or poked, or pushed. They feel like their hair's getting pulled, or their shirt's getting pulled. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm hyper aware of my entire body right now. Something happens, I'm gonna feel it. She goes, and then some people leave and they have bruises that they can't explain, or scratches that they can't explain. And I'm kind of being skeptical, and I'm like, okay, you started this tour in a bar, and you gave people free alcohol. Where are they gonna get these bruises? I wonder. Just my speculation. And so she keeps talking a little bit, and again, hyper aware of my whole body, hyper aware of everyone around me. Like, if someone screams, I'm ready. Like, if something happens, I'm ready to hear it. And nothing does. And the tour ends, and we start to make our way out of the graveyard. And I'm thinking, I'm like a little disappointed. Like, not disappointed, it was a good tour, had a great time. Learned a lot of terrible things about Scotland, but, worth the money. And as we're making our way out, there's this little, gift shop at the very entrance of the graveyard. And it's where the tour is headquartered. And they have t-shirts and books on the paranormal, and they have of course they have shot glasses. Who doesn't want a scary tour shot glass? So we decided to stop in and give the tour guide a tip, because it was good. And so my friend with these two girls, and one walks up and she's like, thank you so much, we had such a great time. We learned so much, we're students from the US, and we just want to thank you. And she says, oh, of course, by the way, what happened to your neck? And she looks right at me. And I'm like, sorry? She's like, your neck, what happened to your neck? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she grabs a mirror off the shelf and points it at me. And there's a scratch from just below my ear all the way down to the middle of my sternum. And I don't mean like a scratch where you just walk into something and it's like a brush by. This scratch is like bright red, it is white and raised in the center and has little droplets of blood. And it's following the line of my necklace. And all of a sudden I'm like retracing my steps. I'm like, what? I can't explain this. I have no idea at what point I would have walked into something and not noticed it. And I'm like panicking and I have a terrible poker face. And the tour guide's like laughing at me because she's sadistic. And she's like, yeah, you don't know how you got that, do you? I was like, I swear to God, I didn't walk into a tree. I was totally with it. I was hyper aware of my body. And she's like, yeah, it happens all the time. I'm like, what? She's like, it almost looks like something trying to grab the necklace off of your neck. I was like, look. And that's when I realized I was the guaranteed experience on that tour. Thank you.
Oh God, I wish I would have been on that tour. Do you still have that necklace?
I do.
Oh yeah, all right. Well, they didn't get it then. Please give a warm welcome to our next storyteller. She's a performer here at Go Comedy, April Dreek.
I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to go on the most epic road trip you can imagine. I have my brother's truck because he's in war. He's in Iraq, and he entrusted his truck to me. So I decided to quit my job. I put everything I care about in the back of the truck, and I hit the road. And I'm about to go all the way through the West and travel all alone, and the point is to be all alone. I know a lot of people who live around, so I know that I have places to stay, and if I don't know someone somewhere, I'm going to get on couchsurfing.com and find a stranger to stay with. So I head out and I go through Illinois, and when I'm in, I'm just loving it. And I'm playing like Pete Yorn's song. This will tell you when the time is. Pete Yorn's song of Splendid Isolation, and I'm thinking, I am alive. I'm driving alone. And then I put in an audiobook, and this audiobook is Into the Wild, which you may know. Now this is the story of Chris McCandless, right? And he is known for walking into the wild and never returning. But I become obsessed with this story. Because what he does is he travels through the West, but he does it by foot. And he ditches his car, buries his money, and he decides he's going to do it all on his own. He eventually ends up in the bush, Alaskan bush, because he knows that's when he will definitely be alone. All alone. And I'm obsessed. And I'm driving through Illinois and going through Missouri next. And Missouri, they have some nice rolling hills, but otherwise it's just meth labs. And every time I get out of the car, I make sure I have his story in my ears. And finally I get internet access and I look up pictures of Chris McCandless. And you might have seen the picture, right? There's this iconic picture where he's very relaxed. And he's leaning against a bus, which is his shelter that he will later die in. And he's so skinny that he looks like he has a football player's plaid shirt on him. And he has wild brown hair and this long beard covering his neck. And he's smiling. He's got this huge grin. And you're like, okay, is he happy? Or does he have a secret? I don't know. And it's a haunting picture because he's so gaunt. He's starving. So this picture is in my eyelids, and I continue to drive, obsessed. And I visit a friend who I've known for a long time. But every time I visit them, I don't stay too long. You know, you don't want to stay too long. You don't want to stay past when the fun ends. You don't want to start learning about, well, okay, I didn't want to start learning about their lives too much. I didn't want to know about the troubles they were having or have to deal with their stress at work. Every time something got rough, I got in the car and moved on. Now the thing is, in the back of my head, I'm remembering something someone told me before I started the trip. A guy just said, you know, the reason people wander is because they're afraid of intimacy. They start on the road when things get tough. Because intimacy means vulnerability, you know. And that's exactly what happened when I was visiting college friends. Next was in Kansas. And, you know, I would leave before they realized that I was not perfect. So again, I'm obsessed with his story and his head. I mean, his picture is in my eyes. And the thing about Chris, though, is he actually also had gone into the wild to escape. He's known for saying, some people feel like they don't deserve love. They walk quietly into dark spaces. So finally I drive through Kansas, and now Kansas is boring. It's just plains. And the best thing about Kansas is all the Bugs flats on my window shield that make kind of like an abstract painting. And I end up in Leavenworth, Kansas, and this is where my friend Alicia lives. And Leavenworth, Kansas is a small town, and it's so boring that it's cozy. And the people listen to Christian radio all day and watch football. And Alicia and I would eat at the diner, and we remember stories when we traveled together in Japan, and it was nice. But then at nighttime, she gave me my own room in this 2-story house, her parents' old house in Kansas. But nobody ever goes into this room. All that was there was a bed and an antique dresser. The walls were just bare and white. And I'm lying there in bed, and I have the window open because it's a warm summer night. And I can hear the crickets because there's so many bugs in Kansas. And lying there in bed, suddenly I feel something. Next to me, in the full-size bed, there's a weight. And no longer is Chris McCandless's image in my eyelids. He's there. He's next to me. And I can feel him, and I don't want to look over. And I become stiff. What do you do? I don't believe in ghosts, but how could there be a spirit next to me? I don't look over, but still, I can see from the side, I can see his wispy hair. The big smile, because at that point he's just skull and skin. And he's not moving either. And I remember he died peacefully. I still don't know what to do. And I turn over on my side, and he turns over on his side. I think maybe he's gonna spoon me. I don't know. But I just lie there all night till daylight, and he's gone. So I get back in the car, just start my road trip again. And I realized, well, the thing is about Chris McCandless's story is that he wanted to leave the bush. He wanted to go back to the people he loved, who he had met on this trip. He had decided that really happiness was like what Tolstoy said. Happiness would be loving your neighbor, doing good work, loving nature, music, books, and then maybe on top of that having a mate and a child. And this is what Chris McCandless wanted when he left. And so I realized he's in my bed, and no longer was I afraid of not being able to be alone, but I was afraid of dying alone. All of a sudden, just like Chris McCandless. I went 15,000 more miles, I think, through the West by myself. And I had to go to Texas. I ended up in Texas because my brother was coming back from war and I had to give him his truck back. He told me exactly when that big, like, green, gray plane would land. And I was late. And my brother gets in the truck, and all the other families, you know, the soldiers had come and met their families, and they had all left, and we saw them leaving with their spouses and their maid, and my brother had nobody else except me. Right then at that moment. And I realized that, like, Chris's ghost is not just my ghost, but he's a lot of people's ghosts. Thank you.
Thank you, April. So there is actually an epilogue to the story that I told at the beginning of the show, which is I was very frightened by my experience in Mayo Hall, and I did what I normally do when I don't understand something. I wrote a newspaper article about it, and I talked to a very famous folklorist, and he told me really interesting things about studying ghost stories and why people tell them. And he mostly talked to me about ghost stories having to do with campus, but in the case of Mary Mayo, the story was that she had killed herself, and the evidence was all to the contrary. Mary Mayo died 28 years before the hall was actually built, and she was a very cool person. She was actually the reason that women at Michigan State were able to take classes other than home ec. So she seemed to be a pretty accomplished person. I don't know why she would haunt a building, but the story persisted, and part of his reasoning was that people want to use stories to deal with difficulties of life, things like murder, things like suicide. It gives people a reason to talk about those things when they're really otherwise uncomfortable. It's also a way for people to feel connected through generations. So that's not really spooky, but your story made me think of that. So, I don't know, Chris McCandis, cool dude. Getting back to our storytellers, our next one is a musician. You can catch him performing with the band Imaginatron as System of a Down in a Halloween show at the Loving Touch on October 24th. He's also one half of the comedy and music duo Alex Knows Everything. Please welcome Adam James.
It's actually Alex Knows It All. If she was here, she'd probably give you a lot of shit for that, but no, it's hard work.
I knew what I said.
Yeah, a lot of spooky stories tonight. I'm probably not going to get a lot of sleep, but to be fair, I don't normally get a lot of sleep. I've always had trouble sleeping, especially when I was a kid. I used to sleepwalk really bad, or I had insomnia. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, not wake up, and sleepwalk, and I would unlock all the doors in the house, and I would take my parents' keys, and I'd put them in the microwave for some reason. I'd put butter knives in the VCR. I don't know why. I was a really weird kid. That kind of behavior was kind of similar to the way my grandmother acted. She was later in life, I was around 13, 14, she was struggling with dementia and Alzheimer's really bad, and she would she would just take a bunch of her stuff, like knickknacks and clothes and whatever, and pack them into bags, and she would drag them out to the curb, and then we'd have to go and grab them and bring them back in, and this would be like in the middle of the night. So we'd have to go out, and the bags were so heavy that you have to like put it on a dolly, or we'd have to have two people carry them. Because she had some crazy, impossible strength. It was really strange. And if you stopped her while she was doing this, she tended to get violent. She would get aggressive. So then, that made staying in my grandparents' house a little uncomfortable, but I love my grandparents. They lived out on Houghton Lake. They lived on a canal. It was really beautiful, two-story home. And it was really fun being on the canal, because as kids, you could go out and you could swim, you could take the paddle boats out. If we were lucky, our grandpa would take us out on a speedboat. It was a ton of fun, and it was a big deal for me, in particular, because when I was a kid, when I was really, really little, even farther back, I almost drowned at a pool party, so I had trauma from that. But I overcame it, and I loved to swim, I loved to be out on the docks, and I would go out sometimes at night by myself. So anyway, another thing that made staying at my grandparents' house uncomfortable is that my grandmother loved clowns. And that's like, she was obsessed with clowns. And I know you're thinking, I don't have a fear of clowns, but still, clowns are fucking creepy. Pardon my language, but they're super creepy. So then she just collected all kinds of clowns. Like every clown you could imagine. Like everywhere, any clown from like the Emmett Kelly classic hobo clown, all the way to like the plastic like the punching bag clown, to like weird old vintage porcelain clowns with like no legs and like scratched off paint on their face. Like seriously, the fuel of nightmares. So the thing is that when you stayed at Grandma and Grandpa's house, if enough people stayed there, they had 3 guest rooms, right? So they had one room. It was a larger room, it had 2 queen-size beds, and then there was a long hall, you had to pass by the bathroom, and then over here there was another room, almost identical, 2 queen beds, and then in that room though, there was like almost like a secret door. There was like a little alcove, I don't know what to call it, it was like a little like, it was like recessed back, and it had a bolt lock on it, which I always thought was weird. It was like the kind of door that I feel like could be easily concealed with like a bookshelf. So if you go in that room, it's above the garage, so it's really small, so you had to bend down. There's 4 super old twin mattresses, like super old bed frames with twin mattresses in them, and then just filled with clowns, like the most clowns you've ever seen in one place. I mean, maybe if you've gone to like a clown museum, but this was like an absurd amount of clowns. So if you're a kid, if there was enough people staying there, if it was like a family gathering, you had to stay in the clown room, which everyone hated. So it was a really great time when you knew that it was, if you just say like, I went up, this particular incident, I was 13, I went with just my parents. So I was so excited. My brother and sister, I think they were graduated at that point, I can't remember. So it was just us, this is the 3 of us. So I stayed in the room farthest away from the clown room as possible. So I remember that night, I remember standing on the dock, outside on the dock of the canal, and I'm looking at the water and everything's super dark, and I remember like gazing at the stars and just like, because that's just something I would do when I'd stay there. I'd go out and look at the stars because I loved it. But I remember being like super like fixated on the water at this time because it was so calm and everything was so calm. It was like super strange to me, you know, growing up closer to the city, that like everything was just so calm and serene. And then I felt something push me. So I fell into the water and then I just sunk down immediately, like ridiculously far. And I remember trying to swim back up because I was a decent swimmer, and something grabbed around my ankle. So I tried to like see what it was, and it was like, I felt like seaweed. It was like slimy and sinewy, and it was just like wrapped around my ankle. So I just tried to swim away, and I look up and I see through the water, I see like a figure looking down at me. So I try to scream out for help for some reason, because I'm in water. It's pretty fucking stupid. But then like water just fills my lungs, and I start to panic, and all my trauma from my childhood just like comes flooding back, and I'm just like panicking like crazy. And then suddenly I wake up and I'm in a bed. I look up and I see the door in the room that I'm in is slightly cracked open. I see a small figure enter the room. I'm like, oh shit, it's Grandma. I'm like, oh no. So then she sits down in the end of my bed, and I go to say something to her, just calmly, so I can just like, hey, what's going on, Grandma? But before I can say anything, she reaches out, she puts her hand on my chest, and she presses down really firmly. And then as I go to say something to her, I can't speak, like I can't say anything, I can hardly breathe, so then I start to panic again, and I try to move, but my arms aren't moving, my legs aren't moving, and all this adrenaline just builds up inside of me, and then suddenly I wake up again, like Inception, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like covered in sweat, and my heart's racing, and I reach over to turn on the light, and I grab something, I'm like, what the hell is this? So I pull it to me, and I lean forward so I can see it in the moonlight from the window, and it's a creepy fucking clown, a porcelain clown just staring at me. So I freak out and I jump up and I try to run out of the room, but I'm like literally tripping over clowns trying to get out of this room. And I run into the next room and I run into my dad, and he's like, what's going on, dude? And then we realized that I had sleptwalked from the room that I was staying in all the way down the long hallway, past my sleeping parents, unbolted the door, went into this creepy little clown room all the way to the end of the room, and laid down in the bed closest to the window in literally a bed of clowns. What the hell? So then the next morning, because my grandpa likes to just like rub it in, he was like making fun of me, he was teasing me. about the whole ordeal, and he's like, did you know that the guy that built this house a long time ago, his name was John, shortly, he was a little guy, he's about 5 feet tall, about the same size as your grandma, and he, shortly after building the house, he was celebrating, he got too drunk, and he fell off the dock into the canal, and he drowned. And then a year later, he said to the date, what I call bullshit, his wife laid down and died in her sleep in a small twin mattress in an old wooden frame. And sure enough, wouldn't you know it, that it came with the house. So, needless to say, every time now that I stay with my grandfather in Houghton Lake, I almost OD on Benadryl.
Thank you, Adam. Good Lord, that clown room. Oh my God. Our next storyteller is she's a copywriter by day and she smashes the patriarchy by night. Please welcome. She didn't want me to say that. Callie McCain.
That's true. My name is Callie. I grew up downriver in Wyandotte, Michigan. My theater camp teacher, I was going to tell you after, we have to have a conversation. So I was raised by a single mom with an older sister. Sister's like doing it for ourselves. And it was like the 90s in the suburbs, so probably a little lax on like parenting. But my mom left us home alone probably a little bit earlier than we should have, but we were like, I was responsible. My sister was like fucking crazy. And we were like really close with our neighbors, so like it was fine, we were safe. When I was like 8, let me back up. My sister was obsessed with the occult. So I was like sort of exposed to it from a young age. And we were like not close, but that was one thing that I was like, fuck yeah, we'll bond over some weird shit. So when I was like 8, I asked for a Ouija board for Christmas. And my dad and stepmom delivered, and like they never got me what I wanted except for that year, except for like the Ouija board, so thanks. And the first time I ever used it was with my stepmom, who never fucking played with me in my life except for that one time. And we're like 110% sure. First time, like out of the box, we contacted my stepbrother who passed away. That's not my story, but it happened. So later, we're at my mom's house. My sister and I are home alone for the night, and we decided to play with the Ouija board. And I'm probably like 8 or 9, she's like 10 or 11. And I sort of always like hoped that she was like moving the planchette around, but like it was young enough that it was still scary to me no matter what. So I like loved it because I could talk myself out of being terrified, but like still got the thrill of it. So we're playing and asking like your standard questions. Is there a spirit? Would you like to communicate with us? Are you friendly? Like yes, yes, yes. And so we asked this spirit its name. Follow me down this path. I want you to like go on the journey that I'm on. VERONICA. Veronica. This is the ghost name you've chosen, Katie. It's Veronica, like more like cliche 90s name, no. So I'm like checked out, I'm like, great, Veronica, hey, like, I hope like you get to go to the prom with like the football player or whatever. So we put the Ouija board away, like nothing really happens after that, and later in the night we were, I don't know what we were doing, but we were in separate rooms of the house. It was also a bungalow, so like tiny, but like enough space that we like weren't close to each other. So this is the 90s, the phone starts ringing, and this was before the days of caller ID, so being like the mother that she was, just screen the calls, just wait for the machine to pick up, see who it is, and if it's somebody you trust, answer it, and if not, don't. So the phone starts ringing, and I was like watching TV, my sister was doing something else, I don't know, and we're kind of yelling back and forth to each other, are you gonna get it, are you gonna get it, and then both at the same time, I was like, fuck, I'll get it. I probably didn't say fuck then, but whatever. So we like take off running to my mom's room where the machine is. And we both get to the door at the same time, and the machine picks up. and it says, "Hey girls, it's Veronica. Just wanted to chat, call me back." And we were like, no. Mom doesn't have any friends named Veronica. We don't have any friends named Veronica. We're freaking ourselves out. No big deal. We'll just go play the tape back and see who it really was and get over this whole business. So we go to my mom's room, deep breath. Who is it? We go to play the tape back, and there are no messages recorded on the machine. Some shit's going down in the world, don't forget to vote.
People vote for Kelly, everyone. All right, our next storyteller is the other half of Alex Knows It All. You can also catch her this weekend?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's in Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind at Slipstream Theater this Friday and Saturday. Please welcome Alex.
Hey pals, I'm Alex. So I have moved around a lot in my life. I've lived in what some people would say bad areas or sketchy areas. So when it came time for me to buy a home, I decided I'm gonna really do it, and I'm gonna get a house in the suburbs, and nothing weird is ever gonna happen to me ever again, now that I'm in the nice, safe suburbs of Ferndale. So, how many of you in here know what Punchki Day is? That's a thing okay. So I love Punchki Day. It's like a holiday in my home, because there's nothing better than donuts. So every year I try to have a party, and I'll make my friends come over, we'll make donuts, we'll drink. I'm not usually a big drinker, but that's like the one time a year where I really party it up for these donuts. So 2 years ago, it's my first year in my new house that I now live in, and I've invited people over for Punchki Day. And I go to pick up my roommate from work so she can come on back to our party that we're having. And I turn down my road, and I look, and there's all these ambulances. There's like 2 ambulances. There's cop cars blocking off the whole road. And me, I'm like, well, that's my house, so I'm just gonna come home. And I turn into my area, and the police says, "I'm sorry, you can't park here." And I'm like, "No, this is my home. I can park here." And he's like, "No, we're gonna have to ask you to not park right there." So I park down the road somewhere else, and I come back into my home, and all of my friends who are at my house are telling me, "This has been going on for like 5-10 minutes now. We don't know what's going on. We have no idea." So me being myself, I immediately just get wasted because there's some bullshit happening on right across the street from my house. We then see a mortician van pull into my neighbor's driveway, and that's when I really started to get drunk. Because what else do you do when you're having a party and a mortician shows up? So we're all out there just watching, waiting for anything to happen. We're like, what is going on over there? And then we finally see it. We see a cherry picker come up to this roof of the house across the street from me. And it goes up, and it goes up a little more. We're like, where's this thing going? It goes up, and then we see these 2 guys grab a dead body off of the roof of the house across the street from me. And we're just like, this is not what we thought was going to happen at all. So we're out there in shock of what we just saw. A police officer comes up to me because I'm very much just standing there watching. And he says, do you know what happened across the street over here? And I say, no, I have no idea. I just watched all this happen, and this is my house. I'm freaked out. He says, well, all I can tell you is that we know that this body has been up there for at least a week or so. And bear in mind that, like, I can see this roof, like, from my windows. So I'm just, like, going around, and, like, all my neighbors are just going around, and there's this guy who froze to death on the roof across the street from me. And it was one of the most, I don't know if you guys have seen a dead body outside of like a funeral, but it is one of the most surreal feelings that you will ever have, especially when you're wasted and you have multiple people over at your house for a party. But the spooky thing is every year on Punchki Day, I have a party. I will tell people this story, and we'll always sit outside and we'll try to wait and see, and we never see anything. But the only time that I do see something is when I'm sitting outside on the porch alone by myself, and I can see just a faint shadow on top of the Widow's Walk across the street from my house, and I see like a smoke cloud coming out, like someone's smoking over there. And I go and I look, and there's never anything up there. But you know, Homeboy was on that roof since Thursday, so that's my story, guys.
Thank you, Alex. Very sadly, we have reached the last storyteller of the night. Yeah. But the show happens every month, and November is not a ghost storytelling show per se, but if you have a ghost story that you want to tell on stage, you probably still could. The theme for next month is unbelievable, so keep that in mind if you have any interest in being a storyteller. About half the people on the lineup tonight were doing this for the first time, so we're very open to first-timers. But to get to the last storyteller, he is a stand-up comedian. You can catch him at Sellerman's in Hazel Park on November 3rd. Please welcome Wes Ward.
Hello, everyone. Why don't you give a hand to all the storytellers? This guy over here playing sweet ambiance music. My story takes place in October of 1997. Limp Bizkit was the #1 band. So I'm from a small town called Marine City. About 4,400 people, give or take. One dead person in the story. And no, we have a road that connects Cotterville, which is right outside of Marine City, to another road, or to another town, Algonac. It's called Morrow Road. Morrow Road is supposed, some people know it. Yeah. So I might get this story completely wrong, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So basically the story of Morrow Road is as follows. It's a haunted road. And what happened was a woman during the winter lost her child and went searching for her child and ended up dead on Morrow Road, right? One of 3 ways she died, by the way, because that's how scary stories work. Rule of 3. Just like comedy, rule of 3. She either searched for her kid, couldn't find her, and couldn't find him, and froze to death, or went driving, slid off the road, and died in a car accident, or found the child and then hanged herself. So it's kind of a you choose how she died adventure story, really. That's what it really is. Flash cut to October 1997, sitting in class, my cousin John, we're best of friends, talking about things to do, scary things to do in October. We both realized neither of us have ever been to Morrow Road. He lives like 5 minutes from there. And we're like, why haven't we been there, right? We're talking about it. We're like, we should do it on Friday the 13th. That'd be great. And we're talking about Morrow Road and all the scary stuff. And my teacher chimes in. She looks up and she goes, I hate to break it to you guys, 2 things. 1, there is no Friday the 13th. The calendar. It's on the Monday. And 2, Morrow Road isn't haunted. I live right near Morrow Road. And we're like, bullshit, it's haunted. We know it's haunted. We know in our goddamn hearts Morrow Road is haunted, right? And we're gonna show her something. Right, so we go back to my cousin John's house. Now part of the way to summon the ghost is as follows. You drive your car on Tomorrow Road, and you flash your headlights 3 times. Because much like comedy, horror works in rules of 30. Right? Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Right? They appear. You flash your lights 3 times, she appears, and apparently murders you? I don't know what the back half of the story is, but she appears and you straight your pants, I guess. I don't know what happens. So we don't have a car because we're 13 and that's illegal. We're not going to steal because we're not assholes. But my cousin does have bikes with lights on them. That's awesome, like a little one headlight thing. So we get up on the bikes. I'm riding his sister's bike, so I look cool on a pink Huffy, looking awesome as hell. And we get, and he lives on Marsh Road. We turn down Shea Road. Right down Shea Road is Morrow Road. And we go right down there. We're riding our bikes. And we get, no, I've left some details out. Morrow Road, very scary. It has everything you need for a scary road. 1, half of it, no electricity. It's just dense, dark woods, right? 2, only 5 or 6 houses on Morrow Road, right? 3, this is very important, creepy old people that you need. Creepy old people to make a road, right? To make a creepy road. So we're on our bikes. We go down the Morrow Road. We're on the bikes. And we just look at each other and it's time. Flip the light on and then off. Flip the light on again, then off. And we're just looking at each other okay. And then a discussion starts to break out. Because it's only 1 headlight each, do we have to do this 6 times? Or is it 2, then I do 2, do we both have to do 3 times? We don't know what's going on in this scenario. So we just decide that because it's 2, like a car would have, it's just 3 times, it's 3 times each. So we flip it on, and then off again, and all of a sudden I hear the loudest bang, just like that, and then again, and then again. My cousin just hops on his bike and just takes off down the road. I go to do the same, but I have 0 athletic ability. I miss my bike, fall to the ground, and all of a sudden I hear footsteps behind me, and I'm flipping shit, right? We built this up to be an amazing experience. We're going to see a ghost. I didn't actually think it was going to happen. So I turn around, I look up, and there's a woman standing 5 feet away from me, and I'm fucking petrified. And I hear a voice, and that voice says, Wes? And it's my fucking teacher standing there. She's like, what are you doing near my house? I'm like, I'm trying to see if Morrow Road's haunted. When I was compiling this story, I realized I left out 2 very important details. The first detail is we didn't go anywhere near the darkest part of Morrow Road. And 2, we didn't even go to Morrow Road. We went to the end of Shea and just got freaked out. And so, as far as I'm concerned, Morrow Road is still haunted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wes. Give another round for all of our storytellers tonight. And another round for Jeremy St. Martin. And for Pete, our stage manager, up here. The bar is still open if you'd like to have another drink. Go ahead. If not, have a good night and happy Halloween.